Right, so windscreen wipers. Why am I looking at this at the moment? Well, I'm prevaricating about taking the engine out again. Never mind, but I've got the screen in, it's just propped in at the moment. And these are the windscreen wiper holes. And over here is the original 1971 or whatever Lucas style windscreen wiper motor mechanism thing, which is quite a familiar style to quite a lot of us, I think. Well, this is an older sort than I'm used to, with the motor sort of underneath rather than alongside. It's a bit different. Anyway, it operates through a tube along which a serrated cable runs, and that goes back and forth, causing these wheel boxes to move backwards and forwards, and therefore turn left and right, I should say, and therefore the wipers to go like that, which is fine. That's how it works, and that was on the car. Now the thing is, they stopped using this system some years ago, and although it has some advantages, it's quite compact. It doesn't really care where you put the motor, so it's good in some ways. But they stopped using it, and I think the reason they stopped using it was because the amount of lash, which I can't really demonstrate with my fingers, but it'd be commonplace to be able to get the wipers to move, you know, a couple of inches at the top end of the windscreen, easily as much as that, from left to right, just with the motor stationary, to the amount of lash there is in the system. So the industry kind of went away from using this style to, and even in Leyland or Rover cars, they stopped using it, and they went over to this type of system that everyone had been using, everybody else had been using. So I've got hold of this one, basically as it was cheap on eBay. It's a Bosch. I don't even know what car it comes from. Now, can this be pressed into service? That is the question. So the first thing to do is take off these plastic caps, and in here is a circlip, some at the other end, and I'm hoping if I take the circlip off, that arm will drop straight through. There's the other circlip. Now, is it going to just tap out? Yes. Right, now unfortunately you missed that part where I got this operating, you wobbling there, where I got this operating arm off of the cam thing from the motor itself, which is basically a push fit on this kind of knob thing. I guess you could call it a ball joint in some respects. But anyway, right, so off has come the the main leverage, and I shall now remove the cam itself, I think, and the motor. It's like an M6 there, and I've got to get this nut off. Yeah, that was easy. And the operating arm come off. Yes, there we go. Okay, so this bit I probably, oh no, it does say Ford. Yeah, so it's made for Ford, it would appear. It says Ford on there. Oh, there it is. Yeah, yeah, it says Bosch there, and Ford there, so it's from a Ford. Okay, so the next stage is, obviously I've now got this right way up, so the operating arm is hanging downwards, and the mode of operation is that these two pieces are fixed in place, and then this arm rocks them from side to side, and in fact this arm operates this arm. A bit of space under here, or it could be under here away maybe. Yeah, so I would say stage 1 of the wiper mechanism investigation is now complete. Oh, one other thing. If it turns out that the wiping angle of the wipers is wrong, it can actually be altered by virtue of changing the lengths of these arms, here or here. So thinking a little bit further about this, it's possible I could bolt the mounting bracket directly through the bulkhead through into the passenger compartment instead, and that would avoid any bracketry here. Right, now here's a thing. I've obtained some very nice brand new chrome, or in fact I think they're stainless, windscreen wiper arms and blades. Lovely. And I went up a size twice because obviously I wanted the thing to reach close to the top of the windscreen and as far down as possible. And in fact I started with, I think they were 14 inch, which means 14 inch from there to there, which was too small because it only came up to about there. So I've gone up to 18 inch, which makes them 2 inches longer at each end. But now look what happens. Don't worry about that. Now, when the wiper is parked, it overlaps the windscreen edge. What does this mean? What it means is that this windscreen drive spindle is too far this way. So I can have exactly the same length up here as long as the drive spindle is about there, and then it will park properly. So this makes me wonder, what on earth was the setup before? Now unfortunately I didn't get any windscreen wipers with the car, so I can't tell what size was used, but what I can tell is that this is where the position of the drive spindles actually was. So either it parked at a very strange angle, or it didn't come to the top of the windscreen. So it looks to me very much as if I'm going to have to move the drive holes that way, and that might even be both of them. I've been looking at this wiper issue some more, and this time I'm looking, ignore the cracked glass, looking at the driver's side. So the issue is that the furthest over I can get it is here before it overlaps onto the rubber. Now conceivably I could get a bit more if this arm was a little bit longer, but to be honest it's only an inch away at the other end as well. Now on the windscreen wipers side, I've had some work done on my mechanism. You see these little adapters? They are used to fit 70s, 80s style wiper arms, like this one with a 13mm hole, onto a smaller shaft. However, the smaller shaft that these things were designed for was very small. I wasn't really happy that they'd be up to the job of driving these reasonably large wiper arms. So I've had my friendly machine shop modify these. In fact, they're now threaded on in the position where the M10 threaded style wiper drive spindles come out. So they will fit through the hole, which is like that from the underneath obviously, and that means I should be able to use these style wiper arms on a more modern style wiper mechanism. So that's good. So I'm now going to do something which I've resisted doing for a while, and drill a replacement hole for this drive peg further over, and the position I've chosen for the wiper is chosen so that when it wipes round, or when it parks parking is probably the crucial point. It doesn't overlap the rubber here too much or at all, and also doesn't overlap the rubber at all over here. So my optimum position I have drawn. Right, and there we go. In fact, the angle is a bit too much. It's leaning away from the windscreen at the moment, but the centre, or the centre of the screen drive peg is not a problem. It's the one at the other end that could be a bit of a problem. And the other problem is the distance between them. So I'm already going to have to modify this mechanism in order to increase the spacing. This one's here, and rather being this distance, we're now talking about this distance, which is probably about 6 inches longer. So I'll come back in a minute when I've done that. Right, here's the mechanism. So I'm now going to cut that in half, insert a piece of, what is that, 15mm tube. It's already been lengthened once. I'm going to lengthen it again, but I'm going to cut out the piece that I put in previously. So I'm going to cut this off, lengthen it and weld it back together again. Okay then, so that's my extended drive rod, that's my extended, don't know, frame possibly, and I just need to reattach. Well now, I think I'm kind of committed, so here is my modified mechanism. And these are the new holes, that one and that one, and just get the thing in there. There it goes. Yeah, so this hole and the bulkhead hole, which you can see the other side of in there, is what, I'll put you down for a second, is what enables the correct angle to be, what do you strangely, the angle between the screen and the drive peg should be 90 degrees. So I'm inside the car now, and I've got to work out how to deal with this hole which I cut in the bulkhead, which you can see here. That's the hole, and that's the back of the windscreen wiper mechanism, which I had to cut out in order to allow the thing to tip back enough sufficiently. So I'm very nearly at the point where I can drill my mounting holes through. So I was just going to check my angle. If anything, it's sloping slightly too far in that direction. It's very slight though. Now my motor, I've already done the flipping the thing over, and I've actually, a little round ball that joins these ball joint things together, I've actually flipped it, drilled one out, and that is a ball joint, and I've drilled through it and put a nut. I've drilled through the ball joint and put I think it's a countersunk M6 screw through it, and that means I can join it up So I'm back at it after a couple of days away, and there's two things I need to focus on. One, of course, is mounting the motor itself, and some bracketry is needed. And the other thing that's been bothering me slightly is this. Just bring you around here. Now, the wipe angle is pretty good, but it does leave quite a lot unwiped because it can't go any further than that. But what I've noticed is at the other end of the sweep, in actual fact, it tends to start touching the rubber down there as well. And although it kind of is able to deform slightly and park properly, in actual fact, the answer to that would be simply to increase the amount of bend on this bit of the arm, pivot that down that way slightly, and that would also have the effect of making this up here, which means that you could then go further than it does, which would increase the wipage down here, maybe up to about here. So we just need to add a bit of angle on here. Now it's going to be quite hard to do, but this is stainless steel. There's no chrome to damage, luckily, so I should be able to get away doing it like this. If it turns out that I cause a little bit of damage to the steel, it kind of doesn't matter because I can kind of sand it out. So I put some tension on it. My goodness, it moved a lot easier than I was expecting. Okay, could it be as simple as that? It definitely moved. I wasn't totally sure that it did. So I'm gonna, at the moment I've got a slight problem with the amount of available wipe in the mechanism. Probably isn't quite enough. So I might have to work on that as well. Let's see how far we get. Yeah, so that is now an inch off the top of the screen. So that means I can increase the wipe angle. So that's no longer at the bottom of the screen quite. And that's my clearancing that I might have to look at inside, make sure it's on properly. It's hard to say how much difference that's made because I didn't measure it. But it could possibly bear a little bit more. There's not going to be much in it though. Alright, that's enough now. So that is, I think it's actually being held up by the other wiper now. I'll need a wiper blade with a curve in it, ideally, but let's not worry about that. Right, I think that's about as much. That's about as much as I think is likely to be sensible. Right, I think that's about as good as that's going to get. So this is my kind of prototype. I'm going to, because I've already got this, I'm going to use that mounting plate and I'm going to add a piece to it. And this piece will be bent at slightly more than 90 degrees. It's going to finish up like that. And in that manner, I'll just bring you over. In that manner,
I'm sure you're not quite straight there, but I'm sure, hopefully, you'll get the idea.
So I realised, of course, I don't need to do the full bend from up here. I can actually put an additional bend in it down here. So in actual fact, that's what I shall do. So I'm only welding this together because I already had this piece and it's a bit complicated with the holes. So I'm just going to use it. So here we are. Right, there we go. It could almost have been made from one piece. And then we shall see what we shall see.
Right, okay, so how does this look then? Okay, that looks pretty neat actually, but obviously much too high up next to the bonnet opening. So, as I said, I think I'll put a kink in it just here. So I have a small bend in. Now if I put it up there, that looks pretty good actually. That does look quite good. And with the operating arm, you can see how much clearance there is. Now I'm not 100% sure about the clearance to the bonnet stiffening rib, which obviously comes down here. So the exact height, I've got a feeling it's too high up. The angle is good, but it might need to come down a little bit. Of course, there's a limit depending on the footwell box. Yeah, if I rest it on the footwell box, it's actually not closing up. It's like it's not quite got enough angle there. But obviously it gives more clearance here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to increase this bend a little bit. Or the other thing I could do is cut back on the depth of this flange slightly, which looking at it looks like it's got a slight angle. I'll take a little whisker off that. I don't want to take too much because that's obviously bracing the weight of this thing. But on the other hand, I don't want this bottom edge to restrict the height of the whole thing. So I'll just take a little bit off there, I think is what I'll do. So let's see now. Got you back in there. So I think that looks within the realms of possibility, shall we say. Right, let's see if I can get a mark. Do I have a mark? Yes, I do have a mark. Good. Okay, so I've reattached the drive arm that comes from the motor. In fact, it's put on pretty much as it came from the factory. I had cut it off to fix it on from the underneath, but now I've cut it off again to put it back where it was before. So I'm going to put these wires direct onto the pins, basically, to see what happens. I should turn this round really so you can see, which actually makes it slightly easier for me to see the pins as well, amazingly. Alright, so let's go on the... I've got one of these has got a clip on it and the other one hasn't. That's the bottom pin. Just twist the wires together so I can point with it more easily. Okay, so that's going round. I was forgetting, of course, there's 2 speeds, isn't there? So it's possible that there actually are 4 in use. And it's also possible, of course I've got no way of knowing whether it's running in the right direction at the moment, but that's looking a bit like it could be fast. That doesn't do anything at all. And this, presumably therefore, is slow. Right, so a little bit of time on internet reveals that this motor may not work like traditional motors do. They're designed to operate with a body control module, which means there's magic at stake. So I'm not going to worry about the park position, it's really just the sweep that's important. So these are the 4 pins. The top one, well, I'm not sure whether it's earth or 12 volts. I suspect it's earth actually, so I'm going to go with that. The top middle pin doesn't do anything. The bottom one is fast, and the other one is slow. So I'm just going to solder a couple of wires on there. Let's see how quickly I can do this. How neatly I can do it. I'm not yet ready to be actually wiring the car, so this is just temporary, and just to check that it actually does do what I hope it will do. Right, so I'll put the motor back on. And put the arm on. Right, so that's my temporary joint. So now, okay, here's my power supply thing. It's just a 12 volt power supply, and for safety's sake I've pulled the wipers up just in case they do something weird. Let's see what happens. Well, that looks pretty good. There's a bit of a clunking noise going on. So I think what was happening there is that the arm is kind of going downhill, and as it comes past the nut, it's catching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a small bend in it so that it kind of comes across and down rather than at an angle. Need to weld that together, so I'll need some more welder gas, I think, to do that. But yeah, a little bit of bending here and there to avoid a few bit of clunkings. But yeah, basically it works. And not only does it work, I need to move my light out of the way. Yes, not only does it work, but oh, I think I've just made the wire come to pieces. Not only does it work, but I can lean on the bonnet. If I lean on it really hard, can't be far away, to be fair. There's probably scope for a little bit more. But yeah, basically it clears everything. But in here is the most difficult part of the fiberglass thing I need to do, because I need to close this off where I've had to cut some bulkhead away. And by using cardboard aided design, I'm going to create a box like this. So what am I going to use to make this thing with? This is bits of the original transmission tunnel. I'm just going to cut those up. Hope my cutting disc lasts long enough, because I need a new one really. I'll just cut across that bed. And there we go. So it now remains to me to glue this together in a similar shape to this cardboard thing, and we will be at the first stage. Okay, so just wait for my glue gun to heat up. Just doing a little bit more smoothing while I'm waiting for the glue gun to heat up. Beveling the edges. Draw a line of glue across here to separate something. Sorry, if you've ever dealt with hot glue that you've managed to get on your hand, you'll know that it stays hot for ages and stays sticky for ages as well. It's excellent stuff in many ways, but has an uncomfortable similarity with napalm. Hot and sticky. Right, here's my box. Let's test fit it in there. That's upside down, I think. This way. Looks. Okay, quite a few back and forth things there, but there we have our box. Right, let's run glue all around there. Definitely gloves a good idea, because getting this stuff on your hands when it's hot is extremely painful. Okay, let's give that a go. So here it is then. Battery went on the phone, so you missed me filling these holes in. Oh well. But yeah, here it is. I'm sure I can tweak the arms to stop that noise. But pretty good white coverage. It's obviously not wired in properly at the moment. It's running off this thing. But proper wiring for the car is not something I'm yet ready for. But here it is. I've even taken the chance to do a bit of painting on the bare steel. And on the inside, where I had to cut away some of the bulkhead, this is the interior view. I've created this box which I will probably laminate from the engine side as well when I get in the engine bay. But yeah, that's pretty good. I've reinforced the back side of these with big flat washers, and I'm pretty pleased actually. Look at that wipe angle. Complete absence of overhanging the screen, either when wiping or indeed when parked. I still need to sort the parking mechanism out, but I'm not worried. It'll be a micro switch or some electronic thing, depending if I can get to grips with the Ford Focus control system or not. And yeah, the other question of course is, why did I bother with any of this? Well, the motor thing that came with the car was completely rusted solid. I think I'll switch this off while I speak. It was completely rusted solid. I think the tube had rusted through from the outside. There's no way that it could be used. To get a replacement, which you can do, the cost would have been something like 250 quid for a new system. Obviously you can get them second hand, but a new one would have been about 250 quid, whereas the Focus system that I'm using here, 20. Yeah, it's pretty dramatic difference in cost, and of course they're very replaceable. So if I need to get a new motor or a new operating arm, now I've done the work on sort of designing it, if you like, that's very replaceable. The drive arms for the wipers, the things down in here, are actually standard. Although I modified it, I then unmodified it again, so it's standard. Obviously the drive arm there and the joining tube has been extended, and the other drive arm has been shortened. I do need to weld that when I get some welder gas, but I think to summarise, why did I do it? Lower cost and a better result. And how long did it take me to do? Probably, I don't know, 3 days of work in reality, and if I was doing it again I could probably do it in half that. So I'm pretty pleased. So I'm going to declare this sub-project over, and I'm pretty pleased with it. So much for windscreen wipers. What's next? Well, I've got two things in my mind, and they're both in the middle of the car. I did say I'm kind of working from the back to the front, but this is in the middle. Now I've got two things. I've got this. It's a hydraulic handbrake. And I've got this. Now, so first the hydraulic handbrake. Why? Because I've got an electric handbrake, haven't I? I thought it would be useful to be able to do handbrake turns, and of course the advantage of a hydraulic handbrake is it's plumbed directly into the hydraulic system, and you still don't need to bother with a specially made, no doubt, handbrake cable. So those two, the pair of electric handbrake calipers which are fitted in a previous video, they were, I don't know how much they cost me, about 80 quid the pair, complete with carriers. I'd buy new pads, so let's say £100, and I reckon a custom made handbrake cable or pair of probably would have been, I don't know, 150, 200 pounds. So there we are on its own. So yeah, hydraulic handbrake for quick use, as opposed to the electrically controlled one, which you have to switch and on switch, and it takes a moment to work. I know this because my wife's car has, the red one behind has that. So anyway, yeah, hydraulic handbrake, which will require different bracketry here. And the other thing is the gear shift. Now, that's an interesting thing, and will be forming the majority of the work in the next week or so. So I don't know if you can see, this is my steering obviously, and it would be nice to have the handbrake here or something, wouldn't it? But no, it's back here. Now, not disastrously out of position, but it would be better if it was here. This is an RX-8 6-speed gearbox, and I have discovered that it's possible to create a remote shift with some bracketry down here. So I'm going to see if I can move the action, as it were, handbrake, from here to here, and that's going to involve some bracketry in here and a fulcrum-y thing here and a joining rod basically.
which will probably result in a hump where the, if you like, real gear changes. But I think I can live with that. It can be a centre console or something. So that's what I'm going to be working on next.